And here we are with game number 3 from the third Newcomers tournament, Group C. I'm Fenech with my co-host Blues. We have a game with Zorbaz, Pavlos, Min 3 Matt, and Arterio, the latter three, who have all won 1 or 2 games in the previous rounds. What do you think of this map, Blues?
It is going to be an awkward one. All of the iron is in the northwest corner. There is enough carbon to make scavengers work. One thing to really pay attention to, electronics starting doubled and electronics colony.
All the water is basically located in these 2 patches down at the south, right where Pavlos has found it next to.
And
Pavlos deciding
Pavlos
to
really taking 2 of the 3 high waters. There's only this one more high water.
Zorbaz also identifying the scavenger spot is good, taking a high and a medium, and then a high steel. Better access to water than Ontario has.
Right. I think at this point, after the first 2 scavengers found, you have to wonder if, maybe something like what Min 3 Matt's doing, a very basic robot, would be better just because water is going to be so difficult so long as Pavlos does secure these 2 highs.
Zorbaz identifying that water will be an issue, immediately going to secure that high water that Pavlos is not blocking, going for a single electrolysis reactor and a geothermal vent. I have to wonder if it would be better for Zorbaz to go for 2 food tiles instead of claiming that geothermal vent right now.
2 food tiles would definitely be a reasonable move. Maybe even do something a little different. Grab these 2 low aluminum tiles along the ridge, looking to transition them into wind later.
The problem with this early geothermal vent at level 2 is power is not that high. Did
Right?
not start out very high. It's slowly creeping, but that's going to really slow down his HQ3 upgrade.
Especially because he's not making any money off of power. He has no good way to buy up all this glass. The single reactor is just not going to cut it.
This
Aluminum.
auction gives us the time to take a look at everybody else really quick. Ontario going into 2 farms without any water.
Ontario has managed to grab one of the 2 high waters from Pavlos.
There it's going. Yes.
I'm not sure how the timing on that worked out. Let's see. Pavlos did upgrade first. He should have been able to secure both waters. Maybe instead of building the 2 farms on away from that high water pump, just build them right next to it. Have your tiles down on top of that important resource.
Now, perhaps Min 3 Matt's play right now will make Zorbaz's early geotherm work out better. Min 3 Matt has got one of those, won the auction for that water tile, and has also bought claimed the other water tile next to it, 2 lows, which will be shipping all the way across the map, which will put some nice positive pressure
Right.
on the electricity price.
Even as a robot, you never like to go without water, but this feels like a bit of an early commitment to it that's maybe unnecessary, and it's very dangerous with what it's going to do to his power.
Pavlos was the first to level 3, has a pretty decent spot up. His high water just got nuked down to low by Zorbaz.
That's something I do have to wonder about. I feel like Pavlos, with the much better access to water, maybe is more of the threat. Maybe you want to weaken his water a bit more.
Yes, I said that was Pavlos who got nuked, but that was actually Ontario's high water that was nuked. Everyone is up to level 3. Zorbaz is going into that second metal mine like you suggested, and was just targeted by just Zorbaz raining down the nukes. Nuked Pavlos's high water tile down to low, so Zorbaz is the only one with a high water tile, but it is not gooned.
Right, that's the one thing I have as a reservation for that sort of play. It's
I
great to
does.
knock down all your opponent's water, but if you don't secure your own, you're just making problems for everyone.
Nobody's nuking it back, so goons are still cheap at 4.5k. His cooldown is up, so he can secure that water tile, and
Oh,
it is
just late.
fractions of a second too late.
Just another
There,
small comment on what Zorbez is doing. This one wind turbine never really is going to get all that much done. No adjacency. It is producing a lot of power right now, but power was already cheap.
and he also
He's
has a single solar panel
does he?
hiding to the north of his base.
Oh dear.
So don't go for those single tiles.
Yeah, it's
This second, I question this additional move into another solar panel with power fall, and so does Zorbaz. Zorbaz questions that move too. So Pavlos and Zorbaz are the first up to HQ4. Pavlos not being hurt by that nuke too much. Going into some electronics. This is electronics colony, so electronics will be high.
for
Put some
Zorbez, I
pressure.
do also have to wonder about taking those two low waters just as he did. The core samples were the option that he could have used, and he does use it to build this high water, but not before claiming all these water tiles. He now has 5 water tiles, and
Right thought, wrong order of operations.
indeed. Pavlos also
Optimizations.
will be able to make good use of core samples to get higher water deposits.
Right. Pavlos should be thinking about doing that. This optimization center going for 28,000 to min 3 mat.
That would
It
be a
is a
nice
good
building.
optimization center. Double adjacency bonus from the machine shops.
I am a bit worried about Min 3 Mat taking it for that much in particular. Power is
Correct.
already very low. There's not much great potential for him to pay off debt with power. And at the same time, aluminum is so expensive. Electronics are so expensive, and they're both just getting more expensive. So upgrades are going to be a bit slow for him. Upgrading electronics like he is doing will help, but I'm not sure he'll be able to escape this debt.
And min 3 mat doesn't have any aluminum coming in whatsoever. He's consuming aluminum for the electronics that he's building at zero 0.5, soon to be 0.75 a second.
Right. We'll see whether or not Zorbis decides to hold on to all this aluminum he's producing or cash out and make a lot of money on it.
Well, he
Either
did just
one.
upgrade to level 5, so the likelihood of cashing out becomes a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 patent labs up on the map again. Pavlos Patent Lab is by the colony researching thinking machines. Off-worlds are starting moderate 24, 25k launches.
Ontario
I
taking this geothermal right now is interesting. Power is on its way up after all these players transitioned out of a lot of power, but it's still a bit on the weak side right now. I think it might be the right idea. Maybe it came a bit early.
and Tario going for teleportation does make sense in his case, given the vast distance that he's shipping both water and aluminum. I don't disagree with that patent research at all.
One minor detail, maybe, if Ontario was planning on going for teleportation all along, maybe you take a slightly different second water tile, just the one to the right of his initial claim instead. That lets you get to the core sample here instead of
Mm-hmm.
having to lock yourself into all these lows or into something that's getting a little less adjacency.
Right. So far, the core sample has not been used very much this game. Maybe once or twice.
Yeah, it's twice. I'm not sure who used the second
Twice.
one.
Zorbaz and Pavlos.
I guess
with
Pavlos is
both
just
these core
sitting on them for
samples.
now. Probably see them come out after he hits HQ5.
Zorbaz is going for a early unprotected off-world. There are no dynamite on the map, but they're both. Now he decides he must have been stream sniping or something because he just gooned that. The delay's not long. The delay's too long for that to happen.
Right, and the Goon Squad is a pretty natural move. One thing I would really be concerned about with moving into this off-world, it's putting a lot of potential money into your opponent's pockets with spiking the carbon price so high, and your
Mm-hmm.
stock is completely undefended. There's a decent chance that your opponents will be able to just pile on and kill you before you get anything out of this. And besides that, the off-world is planted on this medium carbon, which really limits Sorbus's ability to really push and do further off-worlds if he needs.
Right. Not to mention nukes are also a potential goon popper.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is still in level 4. Min 3 Matt is struggling with D debt as we predicted might be the case.
Ontario also struggling with D-debt. Maybe also could have been predicted with the fuel costs, and he actually doesn't have any power of his own established. I'm not sure if that was a
Ontario
problem
does
all
have
game.
teleportation, so I think more of it's from the has had it for a while, so most of it's never getting into any power, which Zorbaz probably wants to transition those two single aluminum tiles that you mentioned earlier into wind turbines. That would be a good play on his part.
Yeah, at this point with power creeping back up, that would be great. Pavlos finally getting those core samples out with slant drilling. That's going to be helpful, but unfortunately just a medium and a low. He'll do enough, but probably not what he's looking for with so many adjacent water tiles.
No, sometimes the RNG is not your friend. Pavlos does take the upgrade, making him the third player to HQ5. Antonio taking it a little bit higher. Antonio moving into triple solar panel, researching perpetual motion. Min 3 Matt had acquired superconductor earlier, which is probably what helped pull him out of D into C debt, although he's actually not making that much money off of power.
One little detail, Zorbus has been launching food this entire time. Looking at the prices, it seems like that was just the wrong launch, like to begin with
Yes.
even. Maybe
Zorbaz,
the thought was that he wanted to launch food because he's producing it, but I think with such a large profit difference, that's not enough of a reason to go for that.
now Min 3 Matt's doing an interesting strategy, going for a level 4 off world and trying to buy into Zorbaz, while Zorbaz is buying into Ontario.
Yeah.
The only difference from our previous games that we've casted is Min 3 Met has a little bit more positive income flowing through than Bobson ever did. What do you think about this move, Blues?
I actually don't love the push into Zorbus because Min 3 Matt does not actually have an off-world. That's just the off-world getting mutinied from
Oh,
Zorbus.
I missed that.
So scraping together that much money is going to be a real problem. I think
Uh,
I like the idea to some extent. Min 3 Matt does not have good access to pretty much any resources. So trying to make an aggressive push makes some sense. It's just Orbs is just too expensive, and this is probably coming a bit too late, which isn't surprising given Min 3 Matt's early struggles, which are in part due to this water.
now, what do you think about Zorbaz going for Ontario as
Well, he's selling out now, which makes sense. I think at the time Ontario was in so much debt that it looked like a pretty cheap pickup potentially. And Zorbus was already going to the second off-world anyway, so committing the money to something wasn't necessarily a problem. But I don't know that Ontario is necessarily the right target. And also, adjacent off-worlds again is
especially with EMPs. Adjacency is good for every building except off-worlds.
right. The only time you might be interested in adjacent off-worlds is with adrenaline boosts available.
Adrenaline boosts if you have thinking machines.
So with Zorbus selling out of Ontario, I think I would like to see this money being committed to paying off some debt. Zorbus
Did
has a strong position in having these two off-worlds, but he is vulnerable. And none of his opponents have really distinguished themselves, so aggressively targeting any one of them isn't necessarily worthwhile yet, I think. Now that
no.
Pavlos is getting up and off-world, maybe you want to go into him.
One thing I question about this second off-world that Zorbaz built is Zorbaz does not have thinking machines. That went to Pavlos, and EMPs. Well, mutinies were cheap. Nukes are cheap. Seems like there's a lot of black market that can be used against Zorbaz's off-worlds. So
Right.
would you prefer to wait and kind of drive up the black market a little bit before going to that second off-world, or do you think going straight to that second off-world was a good play?
I think waiting on the second off-world makes a lot of sense for the reasons you talked about, and just because no one had established themselves as a threat. I think with just the one off-world, you can make enough money to push for one buy, and since you
Mhm.
have that lead, you can maybe even secure an opponent with an off-world before they get dangerous.
Now, while we've been talking about Zorbaz, Min 3 Mat's actually been producing a sizable amount of money, 77% of the buy, 80% of the buy to Zorbaz right now. Got level 5, going on double optimizations, optimizing a lot of different resources here.
Right, getting into that optimization center early, we were definitely concerned about the debt burden. It seems like he's been using it well, though. Having this electronics fully optimized was definitely a good call, and it's paying off very nicely. Also, iron, steel, with although those are pretty much him driving the price up for himself with these off-worlds. Min 3 Matt also made a nice decision to build a Pleasure Dome earlier when it was still uncontested, right next to his base. Maybe not a conventional play, but it was making $240 a second for itself for a while.
Pleasure Dome auction going to Pavlos for 48,000.
That
That
yeah, that seems quite high here.
Pavlos did only have AAA or single A debt before picking that up.
Right, the debt
So,
won't kill him for sure, but it does make him cheaper. It does make him stand out more as a target. He does have virtual reality, which definitely helps. Maybe getting the second Pleasure Dome will convince Min 3 Matt to move out of this kind of weak Pleasure Dome now that it's so contested.
mhm. So we have two stock battles going on side by side, and Min 3 Mat versus Zorbaz, and Min 3 Mat is clearly in the lead in every possible way at
Yeah,
this stock battle.
I definitely questioned that earlier, but he's been able to really break through and get a lot of mutinies in on Zorbus's off-worlds, and that's
Well, they
given
were
him a ton of money. Zorbus has
cheap.
also paid off all of his debt, and that was over 170K at some point. I have to think that was a pretty major mistake.
Zorbaz also spent 168K total on goon squads
Yeah,
so far.
Goon Squad's all the way up to 110K, not something you really like to see. Um, I think generally it's fair to just not push much further than 50K or the 70K Goon Squad.
Right. And that's where delaying that second offer, like we talked about a little bit, may have been a good idea. Ontario's got out of D debt, back into D debt again, unfortunately. But this time, I think, is because Ontario is completely out of the life support market, and with food and oxygen really high, consuming 1.2 food and zero point 0.4 oxygen in a second will drive your debt up quite a sizable amount.
Right, this was why I was concerned about the Found. He just never was able to secure great water, and that's made it difficult for him to move into life support. With some optimization or some other moves, like a slant drilling, like a teleportation, to really try to help out with that earlier, I think maybe he gets away with it. But
Mhm.
without that aggressive push to fix this water problem, we see what sort of problems it's causing him.
Ontario just paid all the way down to 27,000 in debt, using most of his money. Is finally transitioning into a bunch of food.
I'm
Given food's price, it seems like a reasonable option.
not sure they actually complete before he gets bought out, but well, actually, no, that was Min 3 now with all that extra money.
Now,
Leading that
Min
by
3,
Zorbus. Zorbus had that nice early lead. Off-world placement. I mean, one thing you can also say about the off-world placement, they were on this medium and high carbon. He was in this triangle of lows for the rest of the game.
mm-hmm.
Just definitely don't want to put these off-worlds on tiles you'll want to be using later.
Pavlos is mutinying Zorbaz's off-world, which is a good move. The AI, sub-AI, will not remutiny it,
Right. He
correct?
knows they're undefended. He knows he can take them freely. Much safer than trying to attack Min 3 mats. And effectively the same
Unfortunately,
thing. Though there are still
unfortunately,
these EMPs available, and maybe people will be tempted to, well, Ontario's not going to be in the game much longer, so it's just fine.
no. Pavlos needs to make that buy immediately.
Right, before Min 3 Mat can start pushing in as well.
Pavlos has it again. Just needs to cancel out of some of those off-worlds. Or sell down some of the um, money that he has in. Sorry, words are failing me at the moment. There we have. Click the button.
Uh,
Thank you.
for a minute there, Min 3 Mat had the cash to actually buy Pavlos.
This game, unfortunately for Pavlos, is min 3 mat. I don't really see any way for Pavlos to catch up.
Min 3 Mat just did a really good job of continually attacking Zorbus, getting aggressive on stock. Really paid off with the combination of plays he made and all just everyone focusing all the black market on Zorbus. Zorbus really painting a target on his back with these two adjacent offworlds. Never going for something like a thinking machines to maybe help make the place safer.
Thinking Machines, to be fair to Zorbaz, did go
It
very
went very
early
early, yeah.
by Pavlos, back when awful prices were in the moderate range and climbing. So perhaps Zorbaz could have anticipated it being well, but a very good, I'd say, comeback from behind win by Min 3 Mat.
Yeah, got himself into some early trouble, really dug it out with some smart play.
Now, one thing we didn't talk about at all this game was Cook the Books, which was able, and players have been purchasing Cook the Books. Let's check and see who in the black market did that. Min 3 Mat purchased Cook the Book once, and Pavlos purchased it 3 times. Now,
Pablos ending in that C debt despite cooking the book so much.
for any newer players watching on the stream, what Cook the Books does is it doesn't reduce the amount of debt that you have, but it does fake the bond rating level that you have for a while, so you will earn less interest on that debt.
I about the game in general, I will say that it surprised me that Min 3 Met was able to get this robotic found and was able to get it as the last to found. It definitely isn't spectacular. It has pretty weak access to most resources, but
Hmm.
on a map with nukes and with weak water, being the sole robot has to feel very good.
The first two scavenger founds were okay. It was that third scavenger found by Antonio that was more questionable. Pavlo's scavenger found pretty decent, maybe a little bit further from carbon than you like, but it secured a bunch of water for Pavlos.
Right,
Um,
maybe one thing you might have liked to see shifted down a little more even. Rush a bit of water to start with. You can also connect up that little silicon tile with it. Just little things.
and then we saw Zorbas is found able to drive him up to HQ5 first and consistently hitting those HQ upgrades with that really strong carbon and aluminum access.
Right, able to take this big lead on HQ upgrades despite some fairly questionable moves, never defending this high water he took in the beginning, going into this geotherm at HQ2, and just devoting so many tiles to water. I
Hmm.
think by the end of the game, that was all adding up to slow him down quite a bit.
By the end of the game, water price was pretty high, but I don't think it was high for the majority of the game. You can check the resource prices. No, well, it bounced up and down.
Yeah, I'm sure all the water production was valuable for Zorbus, but
That amount of it.
right. There was just, I think it locked him out of sort of making longer term commitments, things that can help diversify what he's doing.
Hmm.
Instead, he's just in this tiny little cluster, relying solely on off-worlds. Maybe some optimizations could have helped out. Maybe another triangle of actual production could have been nice. Just things like that.
Right. And now, when Ontario found, I believe, if I remember correctly, Ontario was the third scavenger
Yes.
to found, so that robot spot was open. But let's say that Min 3 Matt took the robot before Ontario, then what would you do in Ontario's case?
It would be a difficult game. It's hard to really say. I think part of I think he did a good job grabbing this water tile when Pavlos left it free to take.
Hmm.
Maybe prioritize gooning that a little more. Maybe
Yes.
if once you see your water being hit like this, he did pick up teleportation. I think he needed to pick up a third water tile with teleportation. If he was not going to go for teleportation, some sort of way to try to end the game a little faster. I don't know what that would have been. Power was not an option this game, and that's usually
Hmm.
the route to a quick win. It
Right.
just
Yeah.
was a difficult situation.
Unfortunately, when there's three founding spots and you're the fourth player, the correct thing is don't take the worst founding spot third.
Yeah,
But
Ontario
when you are
saying,
that fourth player, your options sometimes get pretty limited.
right, he was saying that Zorbus founded on that spot right when he wanted to. I guess um, when you don't really have a backup plan in mind, sometimes you end up in a bit of a suboptimal place, especially since there weren't great choices left anyway.
Hmm. All right, that is everything I have to say on this game.
Yep.
Good comeback from behind win by Min 3 Matt. Let's head on to the next one.
Just looking at this entertainment revenue right now, 62K for Min 3 Mat, 203K for Pavlos. Pavlos definitely committed a lot more money and time to that entertainment revenue, though. I think for the time that Min 3 Mat went into that Pleasure Dome initially, that was a pretty decent sized boost for him. Nice play that most players won't think about. I I can't remember the last time I built a pleasure dome connected to my HQ.